Black billionaire's seat, taken by white passenger moments. Later, the flight gets shut down. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Mom, you must be confused. This isn't your seat. The voice snapped across the first-class cabin like a seatbelt tightening mid-turbulence sharp, entitled, echoing through the quiet hum of pre-departure checks. Passengers turned, one by one, as if pulled by an unseen thread, their eyes landing on the confrontation unfolding in row 1A. A white woman in a tailored cream blazer had already settled into the wide leather seat, legs crossed, glass of welcome champagne in hand as if Shed owned it her entire life. She didn't look up when she spoke. She didn't need to. Entitlement did the looking for her. Across from her stood a black woman, tall, poised, travel coat draped neatly over one arm. Her boarding pass was between two fingers, perfectly aligned, perfectly valid. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her stillness cut louder than any argument. "That's my seat," she said softly. The woman in the blazer finally glanced up. The smile she gave wasn't a smile, it was a performance of superiority. "Sweetheart, these seats are assigned. Maybe check your ticket again, or ask the flight attendant for help." The pause before the last word carried all the weight of a slur without using one. A murmur rippled through the cabin. A businessman adjusted his cufflinks, pretending he wasn't watching. The couple in 1C exchanged glances. Screens dimmed. Phones stopped scrolling. The moment crystallized in the cabin, lights silent, suspended, waiting. The black woman didn't move. Her expression remained composed, almost serene. "My ticket says 1A. The woman in the blazer laughed, a brittle, glassy sound. "Yes, and mine says 1A too. I think we both know who's more likely to be in the right seat." A soft gasp fluttered from somewhere behind row 2. The kind of gasp that comes when someone witnesses a line being crossed boldly, unapologetically, and in public. A flight attendant approached, young, nervous smile, hands clasped too tightly. "Is there a problem here?" The woman in the blazer pointed at the black woman like one points at misplaced luggage. "Yes, she's trying to take my seat. I've already settled in, and I'd like to depart on time." The flight attendant scanned the tickets, eyes flicking back and forth, confusion growing by the second. Ma'am, according to our system, 1A belongs to me," the passenger snapped, pressing a manicured finger against the headrest. "I fly this route twice a month. I know this seat. I always get it." Her voice rose. Not loud yet, but sharpened, as if preparing to cut. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here." Now, back to her Dr. Naomi Sinclair. Naomi stood still, her silence unsettlingly graceful. Her eyes moved from the flight attendant to the woman occupying her seat, studying her not with anger, but with a cold, precise understanding, the kind that belonged to someone who had lived this pattern before. Someone who recognized the choreography of prejudice, step by familiar step. The woman in the blazer leaned back and shrugged. "Look, sweetheart, maybe economy has something available. I'm sure they'll find you a seat. You'll be more comfortable there." The cabin froze. A man near the aisle muttered, "That's uncalled for." His wife elbowed him, eyes wide. They weren't supposed to interfere with the rituals of quiet discrimination. The flight attendant took a breath. Then another. "Mom, the system shows Dr. Sinclair is the passenger assigned to 1A. The woman in the blazer laughed again, louder this time, turning it into a spectacle. "Oh, please. You really believe that? Maybe she upgraded last minute. Or maybe..." Another pause. Another unspoken insult. "Someone made a mistake." Her voice dipped, soft but venomous. "These seats aren't exactly cheap." Naomi's gaze didn't flinch, didn't break. She simply tilted her head, a gesture so small, yet it shifted the air, as if the cabin itself leaned forward with her. I paid for this seat, Naomi said, and I intend to sit in it. The woman scoffed. You? In 1A? Right. The disrespect hit the cabin like a sudden drop in altitude, that lurching feeling where the body braces before the mind understands what's happening. The flight attendant tried again, more firmly. Mom, I'll need you to return to your assigned seat. I already am in my assigned seat. Then to Naomi, with a low, theatrical whisper. People like you always get confused on flights like this. It's fine. Just ask for help next time. A hush. A chill. A subtle tightening of shoulders across the aisle. Naomi's eyes lifted slowly, locking onto the woman's face with a calm that felt dangerous. Her breaths were steady, her posture unshaken. The air seemed to still around her. And then the smallest smile. Not amused, not forgiving. A smile of someone who knew something no one else in that cabin knew. Something that, in a matter of minutes, would shut down the entire flight. And every passenger watching would soon learn exactly who they had underestimated. The moment hung there brittle, stretching like a hairline crack across glass as Dr. Naomi Sinclair eased her carry-on beneath the seat, her movements slow, deliberate, controlled. She wasn't rattled, she wasn't flustered. She was calibrating the way a surgeon measures the silence before an incision. The flight attendant cleared her throat. Ma'am, I really do need you to return to your original seat, so we can begin departure procedures. But the woman in the cream blazer only lifted her chin, wearing privilege like perfume. I told you, she said, voice sliding into condescension. I'm already in the right seat. Her ticket must be wrong. Or maybe someone like her got confused. A man across the aisle winced. Here we go, he muttered. His wife shot him a warning glare, but her eyes betrayed the same discomfort. Naomi remained standing, perfectly poised, hands folded lightly over her boarding pass. I purchased one, 3 weeks ago, she said, tone even, factual. Direct confirmation from the airline. Sweetheart, the woman laughed, you can say whatever you want. That doesn't make it true. Her phone was already out, camera angled. She was recording. Just documenting this, she said brightly. In case she makes a scene. The irony made a few passengers shift in their seats. The flight attendant tried again, voice straining against tension. Mom, if you don't comply, I'll need to escalate this. Escalate it, the woman snapped, shrugging. I'd love to speak to someone actually in charge. Naomi's eyebrow lifted almost imperceptibly a tell. A signal, a quiet flicker of power. A second attendant arrived, older, composed, wearing the crisp authority of 30 years in aviation. Her voice carried no tremble, only clarity. What seems to be the issue? The woman in the blazer spoke first, eager to control the narrative. This lady is trying to take my first-class seat. I've told her politely that she's mistaken. I fly this route constantly. I always sit here. The senior attendant inspected both boarding passes. Her eyes narrowed, then sharpened. Mom, she said firmly, your seat is 4C. A pin dropped somewhere in row 3. A man exhaled softly. Someone whispered, oh boy, but the woman in the blazer wasn't done. That's impossible. I booked 1A months ago. The attendant's voice stayed professional. Our system shows your original reservation was modified 2 weeks ago. You were reassigned. Reassigned, the woman spat. To the 4th row? Absolutely not. Seats like this, she slapped the leather armrest, aren't given to people like her. A silence rolled across the cabin, heavy and electric. Naomi inhaled once, calm, clean, controlled. She did not reply to the insult. She absorbed and repurposed it the way storms inhale heat before turning it back as force. The senior attendant straightened her shoulders. Mom, if you refuse to move, well, need to inform the captain. The woman barked a laugh. Oh, please. The captain has bigger things to worry about. I'm sure he'll side with the paying customer. Naomi finally spoke. I am a paying customer. Of course you are, the woman replied, dripping sarcasm. Business class mistake? Corporate travel voucher? Or did someone sponsor your ticket for a company conference? A murmur rippled. A man in 1C whispered, This is getting ugly. The senior attendant tapped her radio. Captain, we need you at the front cabin. Passengers straightened instantly. When the captain is summoned, the mood of a plane changes like a courtroom awaiting the judge. Moments later, he arrived. Tall, composed, uniform immaculate. "What's happening?" The senior attendant handed him the scanner. "Seat conflict. Passenger in 1A," she said, nodding toward Naomi, "is assigned to the seat. Passenger in 4C refuses to move." The captain read the screen, his jaw set. "All right." Then he turned to the seated woman. "Mom, you'll need to gather your things." "No," she said, crossing her arms. "I will not be moved because some system glitched and let." She stopped herself, but the damage was done. The captain's face hardened. "Mom, last warning. Comply, or you will be removed from the aircraft." "You can't remove me," she snapped. "Do you know who I am?" The cabin held its breath. Naomi finally looked her in the eye. A single, quiet sentence. "Do you know who I am?" The woman blinked, unsure how to respond. The captain cleared his throat. "Ma'am, you have 30 seconds. This is ridiculous." She turned to the cabin, seeking allies. "Are we really pretending she belongs in 1A? Nobody answered. Not one. And that silence, that collective refusal to support her, was the first true crack in her confidence. She stood abruptly, snatching her purse. "Fine, I'll move. But I'll be filing a complaint. I'll have this whole crew written up." She brushed past Naomi, muttering, "Unbelievable." Naomi stepped toward her seat, slow, elegant, unbothered. But before she could sit, the captain's radio crackled. "Captain," a voice said, "I think you need to hear this." Passenger manifest flagged Dr. Sinclair's profile. Chez. The cabin fell still. Naomi's eyes lowered, a quiet storm forming behind them. Whatever the voice was about to reveal, whatever name, role, or power it referenced, it was enough to make the captain's expression flicker. Enough to make him say the words that would halt the entire flight. "Everyone remain seated. We're not departing yet." A tremor ran through the passengers. Something was shifting, something big. And for the first time since boarding, the woman in the cream blazer looked genuinely afraid. The footsteps grew louder, firm, unhurried, carrying the authority of people who were not accustomed to being kept waiting. The cabin lights shifted imperceptibly as the aircraft door reopened, and a gust of cool, sterilized airport air swept through the aisle. 3 figures stepped aboard. A man in a navy suit bearing the airline's crest. A woman in a charcoal gray blazer with a badge reading Director of Operations. And behind them, a third figure, calm, polished, posture immaculate, the unmistakable aura of someone who lived permanently above the clouds of corporate hierarchy. The passengers straightened. The gossip died mid-whisper. Even the engines hummed lower, like the aircraft itself sensed a shift. The woman in row 4 stiffened. "Why are they here?" No one answered her. The lead executive approached the captain with a tight handshake. His voice was low, controlled. "You called about a priority manifest conflict?" The captain nodded once. "Yes. Passenger in 1A was displaced and verbally harassed by another customer." The executive's eyes flicked instantly toward Naomi, then softened with recognition. Not fear, not surprise, recognition. As if he'd seen her name on documents far above his pay grade, he straightened his tie. "Dr. Sinclair," he said, tone respectful but without theatrics. "Thank you for your patience. We apologize for the incident, the delay, the disrespect." Passengers exchanged wide-eyed glances. "Dr. Sinclair, sir? Apologizing to her?" The woman in row 4 swallowed hard. Naomi inclined her head. "Thank you." The Director of Operations stepped forward with a tablet. "We've already identified the issue. The reassignment was triggered by a late-tier upgrade request. It should never have been processed. Algorithms don't override priority passengers." The woman in row 4 tried to salvage her collapsing confidence. "I didn't know. I just thought, the system gave me." The executive raised a hand, cutting her off without looking at her. His attention stayed entirely on Naomi. "Dr. Sinclair, per company policy, were authorized to offer full cabin compensation for the disruption. However," he hesitated. Passengers leaned forward. "Given your role, we understand that compensation is not the priority. Accountability is." Naomi said nothing. Her stillness was answer enough. The director turned toward the woman in row 4. "Mom, Please gather your belongings." The woman shook her head. But I moved. I complied. You can't remove me just because she, the director interrupted sharply, is the individual whose presence on this flight overrides departure clearance. The cabin gasped. The woman's voice cracked. Overrides? What does that even mean? Naomi's eyes lifted, steady, unreadable. The executive cleared his throat. Dr. Naomi Sinclair isn't a standard passenger. She sits on our aviation compliance board. A pause. And she's an oversight consultant to the FAA. The words landed with the weight of a dropped anchor. The woman's face drained of color. Passengers stared. Phones stilled. Breaths hitched. Suddenly, every insult shed thrown people like you don't belong, ask for help next time, echoed back with the force of 1,000 engines. The executive continued, voice razor smooth. This aircraft is not permitted to depart until Dr. Sinclair is confirmed safe, secure, and satisfied with the resolution of any onboard issue. And then he added the final blow, and she was not. Row 4 seconds, oxygen seemed to evaporate. Security arrived at the door, 2 quietly professional officers, no handcuffs visible, but authority unmistakable. "Mom," one said, "please come with us." The woman shook her head in disbelief, her voice cracking. "This is insane! I didn't know who she was." Naomi finally spoke, her voice soft, even cutting deeper for its calm. "You didn't need to know who I was," she said. Her eyes met the woman's, level and unshaken. "You just needed to know who you were." The cabin went still. No malice, no triumph, just truth. Security guided the woman away, her protests fading down the jet bridge. The aircraft door closed. The executive turned back to Naomi. "Well, hold the flight until you tell us how you'd like to proceed." Passengers stared at her with a mixture of awe and quiet dread, the kind people feel when they witness power that doesn't need volume to be absolute. Naomi took her seat in 1A at last. Buckled in smoothly, exhaled once. Only then did she speak. "I'll let you know," she said. And the entire aircraft felt the shift the moment a woman wronged became a woman obeyed. The door sealed with a hydraulic hiss, echoing down the fuselage like a closing verdict. Passengers exhaled not with relief, but with reverence. An entire cabin recalibrating its understanding of the woman now seated in 1A, Dr. Naomi Sinclair didn't bask in the attention. She didn't shift, didn't fidget, didn't acknowledge the dozens of eyes studying her. She simply adjusted the cuff of her travel coat, crossed one ankle over the other, and settled into her seat with the composure of someone reclaiming what had always been hers. The captain approached her once more, no script, no performative gestures, just sincerity honed by years of leadership. "Dr. Sinclair," he said quietly, "I want you to know the entire crew is at your disposal. If you need anything, I'll let you know," she repeated softly. Her tone wasn't cold. It was precise, the sound of someone drawing clean boundaries in a space where those boundaries had just been trampled. The captain nodded and returned to the cockpit. The senior flight attendant began instructing the cabin to prepare for departure, her voice steadier now, anchored by clarity. But the passengers weren't ready to move on. Not yet. A businessman in 2D leaned into the aisle, eyes wide. "Excuse me, ma'am," he whispered to his seatmate. "Doesn't FAA oversight mean she can shut down a whole airport?" His seatmate murmured. "Maybe a runway, maybe a flight, maybe more." The speculation fluttered forward like wind over tall grass, each row catching a piece of the whispered awe. None of it reached Naomi, but the flight attendants noticed. Passengers in first class adjusted themselves like they were in the presence of royalty, knees together, backs straight, voices lowered. The cabin wasn't just quiet, it was curated. A young attendant, no older than 23, approached cautiously. Her hands trembled around a silver carafe. "Dr. Sinclair, coffee or tea? We have a special reserve blend," if Naomi lifted her gaze. "1 tea," she said. "No sugar." The attendant nodded so vigorously she nearly bowed. "Of course." Right away, across the aisle, a middle-aged woman leaned toward her husband, whispering. She didn't even raise her voice. That's what scares me the most. Her husband nodded slowly. That's what real power looks like. A few rows back, the murmurs shifted. Should we apologize to her? I didn't say anything, but I feel like I should. Lord, imagine disrespecting a person who can ground a plane. Naomi heard none of it. She opened her tablet, stylus gliding across the screen with unhurried precision. Notes, schedules, documents, work that mattered far more than the small cruelty Shed endured minutes earlier. But the airline executive lingered nearby, uncomfortable, restless, clearly waiting for permission to breathe again. Finally, he stepped forward. Dr. Sinclair, I want to personally apologize on behalf of the entire corporation. Well, be sending a formal statement and compensation options to your office. Naomi didn't look up. Your training modules need revision. The executive blinked. Pardon? Her eyes lifted, then calm, incisive. Bias recognition. Passenger interaction under stress. Enforcement boundaries. De-escalation. And the authority line between crew and passengers. She paused. And you need to retrain your gate staff. Thoroughly. The executive swallowed hard. Yes, Dr. Sinclair. Consider it done. She returned to her notes. The conversation was over, and he knew it. He stepped away, wiping his brow, whispering under his breath to the director. You realize who she is, right? If she writes a report, we're under federal review. The director whispered back. If she writes a report, we're not under review. We're under fire. Passengers stiffened, even the ones pretending not to listen. A few minutes later, the young attendant returned with Naomi's tea hands steadier now. Here you go, ma'am. Naomi accepted it with a nod. No smile, no frost, just acknowledgement. But that small gesture alone made the attendant inhale like she'd been handed a promotion. Then a voice, soft, nervous, from 1C. Dr. Sinclair, I'm sorry. Naomi turned. The man in 1C looked down at his hands, guilt running through his posture. I didn't say anything earlier. I should have. I'm sorry. She studied him for a long, quiet second. Thank you, she said, and somehow that simple response made sweat bead at his temples. He exhaled shakily and whispered. She had no idea who she was talking to. Naomi looked out the window, the skyline glinting in the fading light. She shouldn't have needed to, she replied. Her voice was soft, but it settled over the cabin like a verdict. A few rows back, a young girl tugged her mother's sleeve. Mom, is she famous? Her mother shook her head slowly, eyes never leaving Naomi. No, sweetheart, she whispered. She's powerful. The flight attendants secured the cabin. The engines roared to life. But the atmosphere had changed. Gravity itself seemed to tilt toward row 1A. And the moment the wheels lifted from the runway, every soul on that aircraft understood this wasn't just a flight anymore. It was the beginning of consequences. At 30,000 feet, the cabin settled into a hush that felt less like peace and more like reverence. The lights dimmed to a soft amber glow, the engines droning in a steady lullaby, the kind that usually soothed passengers into movies or half-dreams. But no one in first class slept, not with Dr. Naomi Sinclair seated in 1A. Not after what had happened. A flight attendant approached with a linen-lined tray, her voice lowered as if entering a sanctuary. Dr. Sinclair, would you like your meal served now or later? Later, Naomi said, not unkindly. Thank you. The attendant bowed her head slightly, a gesture most passengers would never receive at 35,000 feet. In 1C, the man who'd apologized earlier still sat stiffly, hands folded, staring forward as though afraid one wrong movement would summon another cosmic test of character. He stole a glance at Naomi's profile, calm, focused, working quietly, and whispered to his wife, She hasn't once brought it up. His wife replied, Power doesn't need reminders. It remembers itself. A few rows back, the murmurs had evolved from confusion to speculation to mythology. I think she runs something federal, someone whispered. No, she said FAA. She could shut down a runway with a phone call. My cousin works in aviation. Oversight consultants are above directors. So she outranks the airline? She outranks everyone. But Naomi was not thinking about rank. She was thinking about patterns. Patterns Shed seen her entire life in boardrooms, in airports, in banks, in the polite hostility of people convinced that dignity was tied to their reflection and her absence from it. She had dealt with louder men, wealthier men, colder rooms. Still, the disrespect stung not because it was new, but because it was exhausting. Her stylus hovered over her screen. She exhaled, steady and controlled, as she opened a new file titled Incident Report, Preliminary Notes. If the airline hoped she would let the matter fade somewhere over the Atlantic, they didn't understand people like her. She didn't seek revenge, she sought correction. Systems changed only when someone with power demanded it, not through anger, but through structure. A soft tap interrupted her thoughts. "Dr. Sinclair?" a timid voice asked. It was the young attendant again, hands clasped nervously. "When you're ready." The captain asked if you'd like access to the secure channel. "He said you might need it." Naomi paused. The secure channel was only offered to passengers classified under executive risk priority. People whose safety directly influenced national operations. "Tell him ill requested if necessary." The attendant nodded and backed away carefully, almost reverently. Across the aisle, a woman in 2A leaned toward her husband. "I Googled her," she whispered. "Her company does aerospace auditing, and energy, and infrastructure." Her husband swallowed. "Then that means—" "Yes," she murmured. "Her signature can affect half the aviation industry." A palpable shiver rolled down the row. But Naomi wasn't thinking about signatures. Her mind kept circling back to one detail. The woman in the cream blazer had not merely taken her seat. She had assumed Naomi did not belong anywhere near it, not because of her ticket, not because of logistics, but because of who she was. That was the part Naomi couldn't overlook. A quiet chime signaled the captain stepping out briefly. He approached row 1A with the kind of careful diplomacy usually reserved for handling live explosives. "Dr. Sinclair," he said gently. "Ground control has followed up. They're requesting documentation of the incident once we land." Naomi nodded. "I'll provide it. Also," the captain added carefully, "the CEO of the airline has asked to speak with you upon arrival. They'll meet you directly at the gate." A ripple went through the cabin like a sudden drop of pressure. Few people ever met the CEO of a major airline. No passenger ever did so because the CEO insisted. Naomi closed her tablet, her demeanor calm. "I'll speak with them." "Of course." The captain paused. "And thank you for your professionalism." Naomi regarded him for a moment. "It shouldn't require professionalism," she said softly. "It should require humanity." He lowered his gaze, chastened, and returned to the cockpit. Minutes passed. Clouds drifted by like slow white continents. Passengers breathed quieter. But peace didn't settle, because somewhere behind Naomi's composure, something was shifting. A conviction, a decision, a quiet tightening of purpose. She picked up her stylus again. If the airline wanted accountability, she would give them accountability. If they wanted correction, she would give them correction. And if they wanted to understand the cost of underestimating the wrong passenger, they were about to learn it at cruising altitude. One page at a time. The descent announcement chimed overhead, soft and pleasant, but the cabin felt nothing close to calm. If anything, the tension deepened. Every passenger sensed something gathering around row 1A, a storm tightening its spiral with quiet, surgical patience. Naomi closed her tablet and slid it into the side pocket, smoothing her coat as the aircraft tilted gently downward. The city lights glittered beneath the clouds like an inverted sky, beautiful, distant, unaware that one of its power lines was returning home. The young flight attendant approached again, hands clasped. "Dr. Sinclair, the captain asked me to let you know the CEO and the regional director will meet you at the gate. They're already waiting." Passengers stiffened. Again. Naomi nodded once. "Thank you." The attendant lingered a second longer, gathering courage. "You handled everything with so much grace. I just wanted to say, I won't forget it." Naomi's eyes softened, just slightly. That's how change starts. One person, refusing to look away. The attendant swallowed, holding back emotion. "I won't look away next time." A passing businessman in 2B whispered to his wife, "She has this effect on people." Her wife murmured back, "That's what real leaders do. They don't shout, they shift." The landing gear extended with a low rumble, the sound of inevitability. The woman in 4C, now hunched into the smallest version of herself, hadn't spoken in nearly 2 hours. She kept glancing at her phone, at the blank screen, at the door, at Naomi, at her hands as if searching for an escape hatch from her own actions. There wasn't one. The plane touched down with a heavy, decisive thud. A few passengers jolted, others exhaled in relief. But no one reached for luggage, no one stood. They were all waiting. For her. As the aircraft taxied, the captain emerged once more. Not for an announcement. For her. Dr. Sinclair, he said gently, before we opened the door. I wanted to offer my personal apology. Not as captain. As a man. Naomi held his gaze. I accept your apology. He nodded. Thank you. And, whatever you choose to do next, you have my full cooperation. She inclined her head. The engines wound down slowly, the whine fading into a hush. The cabin lights brightened. The seatbelt sign went off. But nobody moved. The door opened. 3 executives stepped inside, the CEO at the front, his expression composed but undeniably anxious. His tie was immaculate, his posture formal, but the sheen of pressure shone just beneath the surface. He approached Naomi carefully, the way someone approaches a priceless artifact they've accidentally endangered. Dr. Sinclair, he began, voice steady but strained. I'm deeply sorry for what you endured today. We take responsibility, not the crew, not the system, us. He extended a hand. She gave him a measured handshake, respectful but not warm. Our airline, he continued, owes you more than apologies. We owe you systemic correction. Direct, unscripted, honest. For a CEO, it bordered on confession. Behind him, the director of operations added, we are prepared to implement whatever recommendations you outline. Training, policy, enforcement, and if necessary, personnel changes. A soft gasp rippled from row 3. The CEO continued, we realize who you are, and we realize what your signature means for our future. The woman in 4C finally broke. Please, she whispered, trembling. I didn't know. I didn't mean. Naomi turned to her not cruelly, but with a clarity that left no room for distortion. You didn't need to know who I was, she said. You needed to know who you were choosing to be. Tears welled in the woman's eyes. She looked smaller than she had on the ground, diminished not by power, but by truth. The CEO stepped in gently. Mom, if you'd like to speak privately with Dr. Sinclair. Naomi lifted a hand, stopping him. No, she said. There's nothing more to say. The woman's lips quivered. She lowered her gaze. The CEO swallowed, then refocused. Dr. Sinclair, your car is waiting on the tarmac. We would be honored to escort you. Naomi rose, adjusting her coat, moving with the unhurried grace of someone who carried her own gravity. She turned once toward the cabin, acknowledging the silent witnesses to everything that had unfolded. To some, that look felt like closure. To others, judgment. To all, unforgettable. She stepped forward, the executives falling into place around her. Not guards, not handlers, but shadows of consequence. As she exited the aircraft, a single truth settled over every passenger like descending fog. She wasn't the storm, she was the standard, and the world had just been reminded of it. The jet bridge was quiet, too quiet for a bustling international terminal. It wasn't empty, it was held. Airport staff stood at intervals, not blocking the way, but creating a path, a corridor of unspoken respect. Some lowered their gazes. Others watched her with cautious admiration. The way people look at someone they know has changed the temperature of the day. Naomi stepped forward, her heels making soft, decisive clicks against the industrial carpet. The executives trailed her like satellites, orbiting a planet with its own gravitational pull. At the end of the jet bridge, a black sedan idled on the tarmac, engine low, door already open. A driver in a navy coat stood at attention, posture perfectly straight. But before Naomi reached the final threshold, someone called out, Dr. Sinclair? She turned. It was the young flight attendant, the one who'd brought her tea, the one who had apologized without needing to be asked. Her eyes glimmered with both courage and fear, the conflicting emotions of someone stepping out of the script written for them. I just wanted to say, she breathed. Watching you today taught me something I'll never forget. Naomi's expression softened. What did it teach you? The attendant swallowed. That dignity doesn't whisper. It anchors. She hesitated, then added, and that silence is a choice. Next time, I won't choose it. Naomi nodded, a quiet acknowledgement that carried more weight than praise. The girl looked like she'd been handed the permission to become someone braver. The CEO stepped closer. Dr. Sinclair, your vehicle is ready. If you prefer a private terminal exit, we've arranged. No, Naomi said evenly. This is fine. She descended the short metal ramp to the tarmac. The air was sharp, cold, tinged with jet fuel, a scent she'd grown up associating with possibility. Strange, she thought. How it now also carried the memory of a woman who believed she could shrink another human being because of the seat she sat in. Her coat billowed gently in the wind as she reached the car. The driver bowed his head and opened the door. But before stepping inside, Naomi paused. She looked back at the aircraft, its silver fuselage gleaming under the floodlights, the windows like squares of dimmed gold. Somewhere inside, passengers were still murmuring her name. Somewhere down the jet bridge, the executives were already drafting statements, assembling teams, imagining new policies forged from the fallout of a single moment of arrogance. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply breathed in the night air steady, composed, a woman reclaiming power not because of title, but because she had refused to be made small. Then she ducked into the sedan. The door closed with a quiet, elegant thud. The kind of sound that meant the chapter wasn't over. Only turning the page, the sedan pulled away from the aircraft, gliding across the tarmac with the silent confidence of a vehicle that knew exactly whom it carried. Naomi rested her elbow against the door, watching the runway lights slip past like beads on a string. The city skyline rose in the distance, steel, glass, ambition gleaming under a velvet night. Inside the cabin, the air was warm, scented faintly with cedar. The driver spoke softly through the intercom. Dr. Sinclair, will be exiting through the private service gate. Security has been notified. Thank you, she replied. Then silence returned, not empty, but reflective. Her phone buzzed. A single notification. Board channel priority thread opened. Incident at Gate 47. Messages poured in from directors, regional supervisors, even federal liaisons. Naomi skimmed the summaries. Confirm you are safe. Initial reports suggest discriminatory confrontation. Requesting guidance on recommended disciplinary measures. FAA liaison has flagged the incident for review. She locked the screen. Sometimes power meant responding. Other times, it meant choosing when to respond. Tonight, she chose clarity over speed. As the sedan crossed onto the service road, a memory rose uninvited but familiar. Her grandmother wiping down marble floors in the early hours of the morning, muttering, "They don't see us, baby, but you'll make them." Naomi exhaled slowly. Grandma Rose had been right. The sedan slowed as they approached the private gate. A cluster of airport security personnel stood waiting, forming another quiet line of acknowledgement. Naomi didn't wave, didn't nod, but her presence alone felt like a statement. As they passed through, her phone buzzed again. This time, a message from her chief of staff. Elena. Saw the manifest alert. I'm prepping a response draft. Do you want standard language or a full review request? Naomi typed back. Not yet. Wait for my notes. She didn't want vengeance. She wanted structure, accountability, reform, the kind that outlived apologies. The car eased onto the expressway, slipping into the rhythm of the night traffic. Neon signs flickered overhead. Tower cranes stood like silhouettes of ambition frozen mid-air. Naomi watched it all, a woman returning not just to a city, but to a responsibility. Her phone buzzed one last time, a news alert. Airline experiences delay after passenger misconduct in first class. Internal investigation underway. They didn't name her. They didn't dare. But the world would know soon enough, not because she'd seek a headline, but because change required light. The sedan turned toward the residential district, where her penthouse overlooked the river. As the car pulled into the private entrance, a strange stillness settled over her, not relief, but recalibration. Tomorrow boards would call, Executives would scramble, policies would shift, training modules would rewrite themselves under her pen. But tonight? Tonight she would rest, not because she was tired, but because clarity itself required calm. The driver opened her door. "Welcome home, Dr. Sinclair." She stepped out, coat catching the wind as if bowing to the city itself. Home. But the night wasn't finished with her yet. When she reached the elevator, her phone vibrated again, a private number, marked urgent. She hesitated. Then she answered. And whatever voice waited on the other end, whatever words were about to unfold, would turn a simple flight incident into something far larger. The next chapter wasn't approaching. It was already here. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing Naomi inside a quiet silver chamber, humming softly as it rose toward her penthouse. The urgent call still glowed on her screen, a private line, one few people had access to. She lifted the phone to her ear. "Doctor," Sinclair speaking. A breath. Then a voice, low, controlled, carrying the steadiness of someone accustomed to crisis. "Naomi, it's Director Hayes." Her posture straightened, though her expression remained composed. Hayes wasn't a man who called unnecessarily, and never at this hour. "What's happened? You're aware an incident on your flight reached ground control." "I am." There was a pause, not hesitation, but calculation. "We've received the preliminary reports," Hayes continued. "And Naomi, the footage is already circulating internally. Someone recorded the entire exchange in first class." Of course they had. Phones rose like reflexes in moments like those. "We anticipate it going public," he said. "Within hours." Naomi didn't flinch. "Then they'll see what happened. That's precisely why I'm calling." Another breath. "We need to be ready. Public pressure will fall on the airline first, but after that, attention turns to us. Your name, your position, your authority." She walked to the elevator's mirrored wall, her reflection calm, deliberate. "Let it." "Naomi, I didn't raise my voice," she said. "I didn't escalate. I didn't retaliate. I simply existed." "And that," Hayes replied quietly, "is exactly what some people don't know how to handle." The elevator chimed, slowing as it reached her floor. Hayes continued. "Well, support whatever course of action you choose. Formal review, mandatory policy updates, congressional briefings, all are within reach." Naomi stepped into the hallway, lights clicking on automatically. "I'll send you my recommendations in the morning," she said. "Real ones, not cosmetic." "Understood." A pause. "Naomi, are you all right?" She stopped at her door. Was she? Not shaken, not surprised, but tired. Tired in the way people become when patterns repeat themselves across decades, across rooms, across altitudes. "I'm steady," she said. "That's enough." Hayes exhaled with something like relief. "Good night, Dr. Sinclair. Good night." She ended the call. Her penthouse welcomed her with soft lighting, warm wood, the faint scent of lavender from the diffuser by the window. The city sprawled beneath her bridges, glowing, streets pulsing, skyscrapers rising like exclamation points in the night. She laid her coat over the arm of the sofa, poured a glass of water, stood by the window. Below, the river moved with slow certainty, carving its path through the city the way she carved hers through the structures that tried, again and again, to underestimate her. Her phone vibrated one last time. A message from Elena. News cycle starting early. Video already at 2 million views. Comments flooding in. Hashtags forming. People are choosing sides. Naomi typed only 2 words. Let them. She set the phone down, took a sip of water, and finally allowed a single breath, long, steady, to ease from her chest. Not relief, not triumph. Conviction. The world could watch. The world would watch. And when the time came, she would speak, not to punish an airline, or a woman in a cream blazer, or a cabin full of witnesses, but to remind people that dignity was not negotiable. Not at a gate, not in first class, not anywhere. She closed the curtains, leaving the city lights behind. Tomorrow, change would begin. Tonight, power rested.